And the public has the right to see them side by side, which is why that debate on September 10th is so important. At some point, she's going to have to articulate where she stands, and she's afraid that it's going to turn voters off.
It's another day and same story when it comes to the Kamala Harris campaign, because pollsters continue to come out and warn the campaign about their current strategy, which is to hide her. And it's funny how you have two candidates running for president. One is always in the media, and the other one, you can't find her in the media. And you're going to find out pretty shortly why that may be a good or bad thing. But not only one, but a few pollsters in this video is going to tell you why that's not actually going to work for her. And it's a sharp warning to her campaign, especially when Donald Trump usually overperforms.
Trump's vote is firm. Is Kamala Harris's vote firm? Well, most of the people voting for Harris were not voting for her 36 days ago.
Right.
So consequently, that vote is not as hard and fast as it might seem. And we also think in terms of what's called an informed electorate and an uninformed electorate. An informed electorate doesn't move much. An uninformed electorate really can move. So quick, if you can find Kamala Harris's policies on her website, let me know.
Okay, so let's pause right here because it's a phenomenal point that we have to understand. When it comes to Trump, the polls are what they are. This is as good as it's going to get. And when election day comes, he'll probably get more than what the polls are saying. And why is that? Because people know where Trump stands. They know what his policies are. They know what he did. They know what he's probably going to do. And so there's clarity around that when it comes to him. So that means the voters are very informed when it comes to Trump, but they're not informed when it comes to Kamala Harris. So it's more risky that it could either go up and she could blow him out of the water, or those votes are not actually solid. And when election day comes, not a lot of people are going to vote for her because they're not informed. They don't know what she stands for. They don't know what she's all about. And that's why I'm saying they're playing a very tricky game with how they're handling her. And I think they believe it's actually more riskier to put her out there than for her not to answer questions. So it just remains to be seen, of course, but that's why he's making that point. Okay, so let's just look at these two sources that people have been using to gauge where they're at in this election up to this point. Now, one is strictly on polling and the other one is based on betting. So Polymarket is based on betting. And right now, Trump is still ahead by 1 percentage point. He's at 50%. And what I want to bring our attention to are the battleground states. You got Nevada, Arizona, Georgia, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Michigan. So Nevada, Trump is up. Arizona, Trump is up. Georgia, Trump is up. North Carolina, Trump is up. And in Pennsylvania, he is up by 2%. So if he wins those states exactly how the betting market has it, he is the next president of the United States. Because in Wisconsin and Michigan, they have Harris pretty much trumping him, so to speak. So it doesn't look like he's faring very well in that department. Now, let's look at realclearpolling.com and what they have to say about it. And it's the same thing. If they go based off what the averages are right now, Trump is going to win Nevada. He will win Arizona. He will win Georgia. He will win North Carolina, and he will win Pennsylvania, and he will lose Michigan and Wisconsin. And so if this actually plays out, which I think is the most reasonable outcome, even if he lost Nevada, which I think this is the most reasonable outcome based on everything I've seen, because listen, they've done everything for her campaign. She's run almost a perfect campaign, and she is still not clobbering him when it comes to the polling like Joe Biden and Hillary Clinton. But the one glaring weakness she has is something that the media is starting to call out more and more, like this.
I think it was kind of an unforced error. I don't know why they've made this into such a big deal. Had she been giving interviews throughout the course of the last couple of months or the last 6 weeks, I think this would not be that big of a deal. Look, if I were in her shoes, I would do an interview with local press. She's traveling to Georgia. She's traveling all over Pennsylvania and Wisconsin and other places. And I think the best thing for her to do would be to speak to local media in those states, because we know that media is very much trusted when it's local media, the people that are neighbors with the very people whose votes she wants. So I don't know why she hasn't been doing.
Okay, wait, Julie, I got to ask you about that though, because you know what's going to happen if she picks local media, which is Local media is great in some regards because they speak very much to issues in these battleground states. And we know that obviously matters very much, right? This really comes down to a handful of states. But those bigger issues, the familiarity with her record, both in the Senate as a candidate, as vice president, that's not something that a local reporter is going to have a handle on. We've all been local reporters. We've all been political reporters here in Washington. We know the difference.
Well, first of all, I disagree with you. I think a good local reporter is very well versed on national issues. I'm not suggesting that she do those interviews to the exclusion of doing a big sit down with a network or a big cable news interview. But the point is that I think she all along should have been, and I would urge her to continue doing those local interviews as well.
Now, this is a Democratic strategist saying, hey, Kamala Harris, that's a huge weakness. I mean, if she had just did 2 interviews, it wouldn't even be a talking point. I mean, it would be, so what is my point? It's a huge risk that they're taking. And when the polls are the way that they are, again, I keep calling this out. I think the Democrats know there's a chance they're going to lose. So they're really focused, which we're not hearing on the media because it's always going to be about Trump, right? And Kamala Harris. We're not hearing the Senate and the House. Those are very important races that are happening too. And that's why Joe Biden got kicked out of the race to begin with. You know, they forced him out because it wasn't just that his polling was bad, is that his bad poll numbers and his performance started to impact people down ballot. So the senators and the representatives who were running for election. So when that happens, you're like, whoa. We can't allow that to happen. But when you have probably the top pollster out there giving the same warning to the Harris campaign, it's got to make you pause.
And Frank, I also want to get your take on the policy issue with Kamala Harris. And I talk about an issue because it's not, the policies are not on her website, and we don't have a sit-down date for when she might do an interview with the media or maybe even a news conference. Tell me how that all plays into effect with the voters and what they want and see from Kamala Harris.
Well, that's significant because we've never had a presidential candidate in modern times who has truly avoided the media. In fact, you have Donald Trump, who one could argue spends too much time with the press, and Harris, who doesn't spend any time at all with the press. In the end, the public has the right to know where they stand on the key issues, and the candidates have the responsibility to live up to that right. And no candidate should be allowed to duck where they stand on inflation, on immigration, on healthcare, on the taxing of Social Security and Medicare. These are essential issues to the American public. We know that they matter in the polls that we do, in the public polling that's out there. And the fact that Harris has not done an interview has not hurt her in the polls as of yet. But sometimes there are things that are more important in a democracy than whether you win or lose. And in this case, the public absolutely should know what specifically she's going to do on the affordability crisis. Some of the stuff that she has said is relatively controversial. And the public has the right to see them side by side, which is why that debate on September 10th is so important. At some point, she's going to have to articulate where she stands, and she's afraid that is going to turn voters off, which is why she focuses on the attributes and the character traits where she has an advantage over President Trump.
I've been saying this like I'm blue in the face. I mean, it is a policy versus personality election. Whoever can drive that point home first and make it stick when it comes to swing voters will win the election. So if the swing voters do not get a clear idea of what her policies are, and the only clear idea they get is that Donald Trump is someone you shouldn't vote for because he's mean, he hates women, he's going to take women's rights away, then he's going to lose. But if he can drive home the point and make it clear to that swing voter that, hey, you may not like me, but you love my policies. Remember 4 years ago when everything was going great and you didn't have all this controversy overseas or with inflation and gas prices? Do you remember that? Yeah, I did that. And you know why it's high to begin with? She did that. So if the Trump campaign can obviously make that message stick with the swing voters, then it's over because he's going to win on that point every time. So some final points. It's a close race. And that's not actually a good thing for Kamala Harris. Now, for Trump, it is a good thing because usually he's going to overperform. If we look at the last 2 elections, that's exactly what happened. Without getting into the semantics and why and where, at the end of the day, he overperforms. So if it's a tied election, it's more likely he will win because we have data in history to see that he overperforms, and we don't have that with Kamala Harris. So that's the one thing that really sticks out to me, which leads me to point number 2. Since 2020, the Republicans have out-registered Democrats. So right now, the advantage that the Republicans have is they have more registered voters in these swing states than the Democrats. Will that be reflected on November 5th when we see the results? We don't know. But what we do know is the Republicans have done what they were supposed to do to make sure that this election, that they were not going to make the same mistakes they made in the last election. Which leads me to point number 3. Which candidate is actually going to make the fatal mistake? I think that is a phenomenal question to ask and think about. Which candidate will make the fatal mistake first? Because they both, if we're just being unbiased, they both are going to make some mistakes. Trump is going to sooner or later say something else again that the media is going to take out of context, and it will trigger people. Is that going to truly tell people not to vote for him, people who were already committed? No. But will it turn off swing voters? Maybe, right? But if she gets on the debate stage and her performance is abysmal, she's finished. That is a fatal mistake on her behalf. So those are my final points. I want to hear what you guys think about this. Where do you think the election is today? Do you really trust what the polls are saying? Do you think that Donald Trump will overperform again? Do you think that Kamala Harris is not really doing great, but she's doing okay, but she needs to do better if you compare her to Joe Biden and Hillary Clinton? I want to hear what your guys' thoughts are and more in the comment section below. Do me a favor. Like, share, and subscribe to this channel. Stay grateful, stay focused, and stay true. Peace.